To create this clock, I'll be using pine cones, a natural material that adds a unique touch to each project. I start by cutting the cones in half using a bandsaw. Just a word of caution, this is quite dangerous. A bandsaw is a powerful tool, and if you don't have experience using it, it's easy to injure yourself. So please be careful, or ask someone more experienced to help. Once the cones are cut in half, I attach them to a piece of board using quick-drying glue. I've previously applied painter's tape to the board, which will make it easier to peel off the cones after the next step. This little trick helps ensure that the cones stay in place but can be easily removed later. Next, I go back to the bandsaw to slice the cones into pieces about 1.5 centimeters thick. I do this slowly and carefully to prevent the cones from coming unstuck during the process. Patience and precision are key here because each piece will contribute to the final look of the clock. After that, I place the cones into a mold that I've already prepared, attaching them with quick-drying glue to keep everything secure. If you're wondering how to make such a mold, check out the description of this video, where I've included a link to another video explaining the whole process step by step. The next step is to prepare the epoxy resin. I've mixed around 1.2 kilograms of resin and divided it into 6 cups, as I'm planning to use 6 different colors. I mix each color for around 5 minutes to make sure the pigments are evenly distributed in the resin, which will give us beautiful, vibrant colors later on. Now it's time to pour the resin over the cones. The fun part is that as the resin hardens, the colors will naturally blend, creating unique patterns. This makes each clock one of a kind. You'll never get the same result twice, as the resin always mixes differently. After the resin is cured, I trim any excess cone pieces sticking out and lightly sand both sides of the piece to even out the surface. Then, I secure the whole element to a workbench using double-sided tape, which allows me to level the surface using a hand router. This step makes the cones really stand out and gives the whole piece a polished look. Of course, after routing, I gently sand the surface to achieve a smooth finish. Now it's time to give the clock its round shape. I cut off the edges using the bandsaw to achieve the perfect diameter. Next, I prepare the markers that will represent the clock's hours. From Lenchwood strips, I cut 4 rectangular pieces, which will serve as the main hour markers for 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock. Additionally, I craft smaller, arrow-shaped markers to indicate the remaining hours. These arrow markers add elegance and a touch of detail to the clock face. I attach the rectangular pieces with quick-drying glue in their respective spots on the clock face, exactly where I pre-marked the positions for the hours of 12, 3, 6, and 9. After that, I carefully place the arrow-shaped markers in their respective positions. To ensure the white resin stays within the designated areas, I use hot glue as a barrier before pouring. This way, the white resin won't spread beyond the intended sections of the clock. For the next resin pour, I mix around 300 g of epoxy with a white pigment to create a contrasting fill. After the resin is hardened, I peel it off the mold and sand both the front and back to ensure a smooth surface. I then use a rounding bit to round off the edges, allowing the resin to flow freely and create a beautiful finish in the final stages. Now it's time for the final resin layer. I prepare another batch, around 120 G, mixing both components thoroughly. If you have access to a vacuum chamber, I recommend using it to remove any air bubbles from the mixture. This will give you a crystal clear, flawless final layer. I slowly pour the resin over the entire clock face, making sure to fill any small gaps or voids in the cones. Wearing gloves, I spread the resin evenly over the surface and make sure the edges are also well covered. After about 24 hours, the resin will have cured, and I sand off any excess that might have dripped to the other side. I start sanding with 80 grit sandpaper and finish with 400 grit to achieve a perfectly smooth surface. Now it's time to install the clock mechanism. I drill a hole in the center of the clock face, and using a template, I route out the perfect spot for the mechanism, ensuring it will be securely held and won't move or rotate. To protect the back of the clock and the exposed parts of the cones, I apply an oil and wax finish, which also enhances the wood grain. And lastly, I attach my logo to the back of the clock. It's always nice to sign your work. I mount the clock mechanism, add the hands, and the clock is complete. Here's the final result. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this project. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I invite you to watch my next video. See you in the next video.